Today we're going to be going over an introduction to 3D modeling in Blender, where we'll be learning about edit mode, the basics of edit mode selection, and some of the most important modeling tools you're going to use in Blender. To get started, I'm going to left click my default cube and press X and then choose delete. Then I'm going to press Shift A. Then under mesh, I'm going to choose cube. Now to go into edit mode, we can either come up to the top here and change it from object mode to edit mode, or we can use the handy hotkey tab, which will take us straight into edit mode. Right now you can see all of my object is a kind of shade of orange, and that's because everything here is selected. If I left click away from everything, you'll notice that everything will go to a more kind of grayish color, indicating that it's not selected. Just like in object mode, to select things you just use left click, and right now you can notice I can left click these individual points to select them. This might not be the case for you though, depending on which mode of selection you're on in edit mode, of which there are three main types. To see these types, I'll come up to the top beside edit mode, and the first one is vertex select. To do this, you can just press 1 on the keyboard as a hotkey, and that'll take you into vertex mode. Vertex mode will allow you to select these individual points which make up the faces and edges of this object. Then we have the second option, which we press 2 on the keyboard, or we can left click here to go into it, and this will be edge select. This allows me to select an entire edge which is making up these faces of this object. And finally we have face select mode, which we can access by pressing 3 on the keyboard or by left clicking up here, and this will allow us to select the entire faces of our object at a time. As you might have guessed, just like in object mode, we can move, scale and rotate our selections here in edit mode. So I'm going to left click this face here and I'm going to move it across the Y axis by just pressing G and then the Y key to lock it to that Y axis, noticing how that green line has become highlighted, indicating that it's being moved across that axis. When I'm happy with my edit, I can just press left click to save it. If you're confused about axes and haven't watched any of the previous videos in this series, you can see what axes you're working with here with this gizmo in the top. Notice how it shows how the red line here is the X axis and the green line is the Y axis. And also another axis which isn't being shown with a line in the viewport is the Z axis, which is for up and down. If you're new to moving and rotating things in Blender, I highly recommend checking out this video on moving, rotating and scaling objects in Blender first, as it's pretty much the same concept in edit mode. I can also do this with my edges and my points. So for example, I could go into vertex select mode by pressing 1 on the keyboard, and I could left click one of my points here, and then I could press G to move it or grab it. And you'll notice I can make some pretty significant edits to my object this way. Just like in object mode, you can also select multiple things at the same time. So for example, if I wanted to select these 2 points, I could press shift and then left click this point here. And now when I press G, you will notice that it's going to move both these points at the same time. Just like in object mode, if you're unhappy with your movement and you want to reset it, you can right click while you're moving it to reset it. And of course you have the Control Z command to undo things as well. Now I'm going to go over some common hotkeys that you'll use while editing in Blender. And in the next video, we're going to go more into depth of the selection techniques. So I'm going to press 3 on the keyboard to go into face select mode, and I'm just going to left click this face around the back here. One of the most common things you will do in Blender is extrude a face. What extruding does is it's essentially pulling out a new set of faces from one face, or it could also be from a set of vertices or edges as well. With my face selected, I'm just going to press E, and you can see that's going to pull out a new set of faces like that. Like I mentioned, you can do this with vertices and edges as well. So if I press 1 on the keyboard to go into vertex select mode, I can left click a vertex here and press E, and you can see that's going to allow me to pull out a new vertex. I can also press 2 on the keyboard to go into edge select mode, select an edge, and press E to pull out some edges that way. This is getting pretty messy, so I'm just going to delete everything and start again. So I'll press tab to go into object mode again, and with my object selected, with left click, I'm going to press X and then choose delete. Then I'll press shift A to open the add menu again, and I'm going to choose cube again. I'll press tab to go back into edit mode. I'm going to press 3 on the keyboard, and I'm going to select one of my faces, and I'm going to press E again to extrude it out. Next up, I'm going to go into inset, which is another common command you'll use. What inset will do is create a face within a face. So if I press I for inset, you'll notice when I move my mouse, I can now create a new face within this face. And then I can left click it to save it. Then if I wanted to make this go inward, I could press E again. Now allow me to extrude this inward or outward. In this case we'll go inward, and I'll just left click it to save it there. So you can see how quickly we've got a lot more options for creating some different shaped objects. We can also add geometry in more ways by adding loops. So to do this, I'll press Ctrl and then R, and you can see that now when I hover over different parts of my object, a yellow band will appear over my object. Keep in mind, this will only work with quad-based topology. Of course, a lot of you guys are probably quite new, so you probably won't know what I mean by that. But it's something to keep in the back of your mind for now until I talk about it in a later video. When you're happy with where you want to add your new loop, you can just left click to start positioning it, and now you can just move it to where you would like. And once you're happy, you can left click again, and there you have another loop. This might be useful as you could press S to scale it, and now you can see you can start creating a more unique shape. If you want to slide this edge along after positioning it, you can press G twice, so GG, and then now when I move my mouse, you can see it's going to start sliding it along this geometry. Although something that you might find a bit annoying though, is if you select away from your edge loop and you want to select it again, I would have to shift left click through all these edges again until I have it again. This is okay for this example, but see if you had an object with a massive loop made up of loads of edges, this could be very time consuming. So instead we can use a command called Alt left click. So I'll left click away to deselect everything, and I'm going to press Alt left click on this edge loop here. And you'll notice it's now going to select the entirety of all the edges, which will really save me some time. As I mentioned, we're going to be going more into depth with selection in the next video. So for now, we're just going to wrap up things there. One thing I want you guys to try do though, is create a cube in Blender or any other primitive, such as a cylinder for example, and mess around with the different tools that we've learned about today. Don't stress on getting anything perfect, just try and play around and get familiar with some of the tools that you can remember. Today we learned about E for extrude, I for inset, Control R to add a loop cut, and the edge slide tool, which is just pressing G twice. If you want to follow along with this Blender modeling series for absolute beginners, make sure to check out the playlist here, as I'll be adding videos every day, or if you're watching this later, maybe all the videos are already released. Apart from that though, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.